What's up, everybody? My name is Corey and welcome to my channel where we create the world together. For those of you that don't know, I recently quit my job as a corrections officer after 9 years. I am currently selling stuff online like eBay and locally. I'm flipping things, buying it from thrift stores, Goodwills, garage sales, and making a profit off of it. This channel is about two things primarily: quitting my job as a corrections officer and all my experiences with that field for 9 years, as well as I go over things like what I resell online, going out thrifting, some things with the family, and just some fun videos in between there. This video in particular is about the prison side of my channel, so a quick disclaimer: this is not for the younger viewers, and there will be things said that are vulgar. They will bother people. This is just as raw and as real as I can keep it without getting in too much trouble about the prison. So especially in this video, I'll be covering some questions, particularly that one of my friends asked me. He gave me a really nice long list of questions that he wanted to know, and I think these are questions that a lot of people might want to know, they just don't ask. So thank you to Ben for sending me all of these questions on Facebook. I really appreciate it. I love answering questions about prison. I think it's really interesting myself, and for people that don't work there or live there, I'm sure you're gonna find some of this pretty entertaining. Again, I do need to say that these are my views, my opinions, my stories. Not all prisons are like this. This is just everything that I experienced. So let's just get right into the questions. Okay, the first question, of course: what is the weirdest thing I found up a dude's butt? Okay, luckily, I really haven't found anything personally too weird up a guy's butt. In my mind, I guess it's not that weird, but I was doing strip searches one day, and this inmate just seemed really finicky in the strip shack. That's what we call it, the strip shack. He just didn't want to give over his jacket and his clothes, and he just was trying to just get by me just real quick and like, hey, how you doing? Bye, 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 see ya. And I was like, no, dude, we're doing this the right way, turn around, nuts and butts, remember, everything. As I'm asking him to do the whole routine and to squat and cough as he's butt naked, he didn't want to. And I said, what's wrong? And he's like, I have something. I said, all right, well, just give it to me. So he pulled out a shampoo bottle that they get. It's like this big and probably like that round, and he just pulled it out of his butt, and it was empty. Imagine, so it's like this big, and this around about 1.5 inches. So obviously he snuck something over, dropped it off, or he was just bringing that because they're not allowed to bring containers where he was going. He was going from our prison to another one, so he was going to be picking something up. So that to me was a little weird. Now, quick little stories of what I have heard, or I came onto the shift and something happened in the previous shift of things up guys' butts. We have had so many things. I mean, I was actually involved in an instance where I was watching over a guy that had a cell phone in his butt, and I didn't see it, but the next day, after my shift was over, he ended up giving it to one of my partners, and so he had that up there. It was like a flip phone. We've had guys stick things you just wouldn't believe. A lot of weapons, like knives and things like that, and one of the funnier ones was we had this guy that he was just always sticking stuff up his butt. And what he would do was he was crazy. He was mental. He would get butt naked and he would just walk around his cell in circles, and he would take his blanket and stick a lot of it up his butt, and he would say that that was his ponytail, and just walk around in circles dragging this blanket across the ground. So that was kind of funny. Okay, next question. Do people get raped? Yes, people do get raped for sure, but I would personally say more people have sex willingly than they do get raped. I personally have not came onto a scene where somebody's got raped. We have had that happen on my shift where we had to send one guy out to the hospital, and then the other one, he gets put into another prison, and there's a big old investigation. It's actually taken extremely serious there about sex in prison. So yes, people do get raped in prison. Okay, so that kind of ties into the next question. Is drop the soap a real thing? Good question, Ben. Sure, I guess. No, I mean, it's talked about like, yo, dog, don't drop the soap and stuff like that. But if you like drop the soap, you don't have to immediately be looking behind you like some dude's gonna try to, you know. So I guess it's a real thing, but it's more of just a joke than something that really will happen where if you drop it, you are absolutely getting a penis in your butt. Okay, do officers... Now, these are his, let me just say this. Most of these words and these questions, these are Ben's words, and I'm just going to keep it authentic and basically ask exactly how he asked. Now, he asked, do officers bang the prisoners? Yes, they do. Male on male, not so much, but that has happened. Okay, let me rephrase this. Not a whole bunch, but very often in 9 years, I have seen many women get escorted out, officers that are women get escorted out because they are having sex with the inmates. That happens. Maybe not necessarily sex in particular, but doing a whole bunch of things that they shouldn't be. Sexual activities, that does happen actually pretty often. I would say often. Not all the time and not every female officer, but that happens. And we have one female prison in Arizona, and that does happen over there too. The male officers having sex with those female prisoners there, that happens too. So that does happen. Okay, now this question is a little long, but it's kind of funny. So this is what Ben says, and I have to keep saying this is him. So cover your ears if you don't like hearing foul language and stuff. Would a pasty white suburban wussy like me end up in lipstick and pigtails running around sucking things in prison? Ben, if you're worried about it, you probably are. So I have seen the most like awkward, I don't even know how to put this. Ben, yeah, you're probably getting touched. If you go in there and you're extremely scared and you are worried and everybody can just see that, you're going to get messed with right away as soon as you get past the gates. I have seen guys that are 100 pounds soaking wet, not even, and just really awkward, and they make it through just fine. They just know how to carry themselves and they don't put up with crap. You just cannot get walked on. You get tested the second that you get in prison. It may be as simple as some guy walks up and says, hey man, I like the new shoes that they gave you. Those are pretty cool, huh? Like your flip-flops or whatever. And then he'll say, hey, mine are all beat up because I've been here for years. Let me just get those, and then just tell him that you never got them and they'll just give you some new ones. And if you give him your flip-flops right away, that pretty much sets the premise for your entire prison career. They're going to look at you like, yep, I got that dude. He's weak. He gave me his shoes. So it's as simple as that. So if you go in there and you're just like giving away your stuff or you're just being weak, they're just going to mess with you for your entire prison career. So if you go in there and you act like a wuss, I mean, you're going to get picked on. So if you are a type of wuss person, or you get intimidated easy and you just don't like confrontation, you better change that real quick because you're going to have a real hard time in prison. Okay, so this is actually a really good question. Are there decent inmates? Absolutely. There's some guys that I met in prison that are locked up that if they weren't in that situation, I'd probably have a beer with them or something. They'd be my neighbor. They'd be a friend. I met cool inmates all the time. And for me, I'm sort of a people person when it comes to like talking, especially like, you know, kicking it with the dudes and stuff. So I'm pretty good at picking up on when an inmate is trying to just play with me and try to get one over on me, or when an inmate just simply wants to talk and just shoot the shit basically and be like, yo, did you see the game last night? Or, hey, did you see that fight? What do you think? And stuff like that. So yeah, I met decent inmates. I've had decent conversations with these guys all the time. And some of these guys are, I mean, they're more intelligent than I am. These guys, some of them got degrees. They just got caught up in something stupid, and they've got plenty of school, grew up in good places. It's just they got caught doing something stupid. So yeah, there's plenty of decent inmates. Okay, next question is, what is the food like? I would never eat it. When I first got there, I did try it, and I'll tell you what, the first time I had a plate of food, it was lasagna. And somebody higher up than me, like not a supervisor, but like a senior officer, he said, hey man, you gotta try the prison food. It's like what we all do as new guys, you gotta try it. I said, all right. So he gave me the lasagna plate. So I went to like flip over this brick of lasagna, and I'm not kidding, there was a dead cricket, well, half of one in the lasagna. I said, nope, not eating this. And ever since then, I just could not eat the food. I believe I did try it a couple years later. It was like some biscuits and gravy, but that stuff is like laxative. As soon as I ate it, I mean, within minutes, 15, 20 minutes, I had to go to the bathroom. As far as taste goes, some people love that stuff. I know officers that they like going to work to eat the prison food. And some inmates, they don't really have a choice anyways, but everybody says the food sucks, and it does suck, but there's plenty of worse food out there. Like, I would say frozen meals from the grocery store are probably worse for your body than our prison food, to be honest. Okay, so that ties into this question. Do prisoners mess with the food? Yeah, they do, especially if they know where that food is going. So we had one time where we had sex offenders and GP, which is the general population, on the same prison yard. They were just separated by gates, and it was a big mess on, hey, sex offenders are coming out, make sure all the GPs are locked up, because GPs, it is just an unwritten rule. If they do come in contact with a sex offender, they basically have to beat the living crap out of them. Otherwise, they themselves will get the crap beaten out of them. So we had this time where the sex offenders and the GPs were on the same yard. And the GPs one day had to make the food for the sex offenders because the sex offenders were on lockdown and could not come out of their areas to make their own food. So they were putting like pubes and just dirt and just messing it up, and we couldn't even feed it to these guys. I don't know what the officers were doing in the kitchen to not catch all of this. Probably busy because the kitchen is actually pretty big, but yeah, we couldn't even feed that food to them. We tried, and basically the sex offenders, they just said, we're just not eating today, and they just didn't eat that day. So prisoners do mess with the food only if they know where it's going. Like, somebody doesn't want to mess with the food and then it accidentally end up on one of the like heads, which is, the heads are just like the head honchos of that race. Because if that guy finds out, that dude's probably dead. Or if not, just beaten, he's getting the crap beat out of him. Okay, how much can a prisoner work out? Prisoner could work out for 24 hours if you wanted to. I've seen it all the time. In the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning, I'll hear some grunts from a cell. I'll think people are having sex. I run up to see what's going on. The dude's just doing squats, doing dips, doing burpees. So these guys work out a lot. I would say probably a good 30 to 40% of them work out a lot. Some guys just a little bit, you know, just to have some fun and to burn some time. But there are definitely some guys that take working out extremely serious, and it's every day. They're just working out, killing it, huge, yoked up, make the Rock look little. Some of these guys are huge. Okay. Do corrections officers make bets on which gang will win the next fight, and also which new fish inmate will wuss out and how long it will take before he's crying in bed? Officers make bets all the time. Not necessarily with money, but we would say it all the time. Like, oh, I bet this guy don't last one night, because we could just feel it and sense it. I mean, especially being there for 9 years, I know who's going to make it and who's not just from the attitude, just like an inmate. It's funny, being an officer for any amount of time, but especially for 9 years, you sort of turn into, you have inmate tendencies, and you're sort of an inmate yourself for 12 hours a day it was for me for 12-hour shifts. So you're there a lot of the time. You pick up on everything that the inmates pick on. So yeah, when a new guy comes on, I could tell you right away if he was going to make it a day or not, or if he was going to get beat up for sure. As far as making bets on which gang will win, we wouldn't, again, actually put money on it, but we would say, oh, we already know the white boys are going to mess them up, or I bet the Mexicans take this one, or I bet the blacks are going to dominate this one. Yeah, but so it wouldn't be anything like, I never really seen money flying around like a chicken fight where we're all in a big circle just watching the gangs go at it. We're like, oh, I got money on the blacks or anything like that. So not money, but yeah, we would probably talk about it like, yeah, these guys are going to mess them up. Okay, so now, are conjugal visits a real thing? They are, but not where I was at. So these guys would have visits with, I believe they had 10 people that could be on their list. So they could get visits all the time, but it was in a big room with like tables, like from like school tables, lunch tables, and there would be about 2 to 3 officers in there, and we would just be walking around and just watching where the inmates are hanging out with the wife, and then the girlfriend shows up. That used to happen a lot. So that's actually pretty funny now that you brought up visits, because that has happened quite a bit where a wife of an inmate would show up, and then later that day, the girlfriend would show up, or the very next day, the girlfriend would show up to visit, and that happens so much. These guys are so bored, and a lot of them are manipulative. They would have wives and girlfriends on the side all the time, and we would see them come through, and that was kind of comical to us. This one's kind of funny. So how many guys would go in straight, how many inmates would go in straight and still have sexual contact with other men just because they're in prison? This one may surprise you. That happens a whole bunch, I would say. And especially, I can't imagine the things that went on that we just could not catch, because I couldn't believe the things that we were catching. Here's one quick story about something that happened that I found. We got in this crazy inmate, and I would love just to take one video and just talk about him, but that'll be for another time because there's too much with this guy. He was crazy, and he was different. He was celled by himself. Now, he was in a cell by himself for like 3 days. So, you know, fast forward these 3 days, we get in this other inmate, and he comes in, and he's this big, yoked up, tatted on the face, gangster looking inmate. I mean, this dude looks hard, right? And he's like, you know, what's up? And coming in, and I could tell, oh, this guy looks, you know, he's been through some stuff, man. So he comes in, and I said, hey, dude, I'm going to break it down to you. We got only one cell available, and I'm going to be real. The guy that we're putting you in with, he's crazy. And now this inmate's like, oh, man, that's fucked up, man. I don't mess around like that. I said, dude, I know. Look, I'm not going to try to do that to you. I'm going to try to get you moved in the morning or something, because you two don't match, and I don't want any problems. But do me a solid and cell with this guy tonight. No problems, and we'll get you figured out in the morning. So this inmate's like, all right, man, thanks for keeping it real and giving me the heads up. All right, it's cool. So I put this big old gangster dude in the cell with this crazy guy, right? And I'm like, man, I hope he don't beat up this little punk, crazy nuts guy that's weird and smells funny. 30 minutes later, I go to do a walk to go check on everybody, and I'm walking right by that cell, and I'm thinking, man, I hope I don't look in here and he's already beat this guy up. So I look in there, and the crazy little inmate is just jerking off this big old gangster dude. But this gangster guy, he's not like forcing him, he's like loving it. And I'm like, boom, boom on the window, and they jump up and stuff and all crazy. He's pulling up his pants, and I'm like, open up this door. And I open up the door, and the dude is sitting there. The gangster guy is, I mean, he's rock hard he's pitching a tent, right? And I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, what, man? He just wanted to see it. I'm like, oh my God, get out of here, man. So I cuff them all up and rip them out. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? I just put you in there. You guys couldn't even wait? And he's like, man, you know what it is. It's prison. I'm like, oh my God. So we obviously had to separate them. And I was like, I was just so shocked that this big old dude, and this wasn't like, oh, he was, like I said, this wasn't like he was forcing this guy to do it. This is what he was all about. And then later to find out, somebody else told me, oh yeah, he's kind of known for doing that because he is full-blown homosexual. So any chance he could get along with another man, he's going to have sex with him and stuff. I was like, oh, Jesus. So that's one instance. How easy is it to get drugs in the prison? Extremely easy. As unfortunate as that is, it's extremely easy. I'll be honest. There's so many inmates, so many visitors, there's so many corrections officers, there's so many contract workers, like the people that do maintenance or the people that do our food. There's so many people going in and out of that prison all the time. And all we have really is a scanner to pick up metal coming in. To be honest, if I wanted to sneak weed, coke, anything that's not metal into that prison, could have done it that night, would not have got caught. We would randomly have the dogs at the front of the prison to sniff us, find cell phones. We had dogs that could sniff battery acid from the cell phone batteries, and they can find cell phones. But at any point, if I wanted to bring weed or something like that in the prison, I could have been doing that for 9 years. I mean, the more you do it, obviously your chances of getting caught are pretty high, but contractors that would come in to work in the kitchen just come right in. Anything that can get through that scanner can get into that prison. And visitors, they would bring stuff in all the time too. That's a little bit harder because normally the dogs are out during visits, but as far as like staff coming in, they could, and some did bring in stuff all the time. I say eventually everybody gets caught. I'm sure some stuff happened for years and you just never got caught, but we had fired officers that had been there for 13, 14, 16 years from this one lady, and she was bringing in drugs for like 6 years and never got caught. She finally did, and she was only a few years away from retirement and she got caught. So bringing in drugs is actually extremely easy. So what's the smartest way that somebody brought in drugs? So I worked graveyard shift, so people coming in and out of the prison didn't really happen on my shift, but a couple of stories that stick out in my mind was we had a drone. When drones first came out, somebody flew a drone over the rec yard, over the grass, and they rigged it to where it dropped a pack of cocaine on the yard. That was one way that somebody brought in drugs. And we also had a tennis ball. So this was actually kind of common. So right by this rec yard, there's a main street how to get to the prison. And if you got a decent arm, people would cut holes in tennis balls and shove drugs in there and just throw that tennis ball as hard as they could into the rec yard, and it would just get picked up because they're allowed to have some tennis balls, or like those little blue racket balls, those would end up with drugs. So that's probably one of the clever, kind of unique ways that I've seen drugs come into the prison. Okay, a few more questions. He says, how hard would it be to escape? It would be pretty hard to escape prison. A lot of inmates, they would say, man, I could leave this place anytime I want to, but they don't. They can't. I would say we had some inmates attempt to escape, but they get caught almost immediately. It's actually pretty hard. Like we had one guy, I believe he was just nuts though. He just straight up ran for the fence, screaming his head off in the middle of the day when all these officers and other inmates are out. He just, and ran to the fence and just grabbed it and climbed up almost to the razor wire and then just dropped himself. I don't think he was really wanting to climb that fence because that razor wire, it's not barbed wire. If you don't know what razor wire is, it's a razor, like X-Acto knife, just a razor, and it's just covering the top. It's way dangerous. It's a lot more dangerous than barbed wire. That stuff, I actually have been cut by it. It's cut my shirt from accidentally clipping it, and it seriously is like a hot knife through butter. Just makes, you don't even like feel it. It'll cut you up and you won't even feel it, and you won't stop bleeding either because it's a deep cut. Funny story, we actually did have an inmate kind of escape one time. So what he did was, we had some contractors come in and they were bringing in AC units. They had like 4 of them on this big truck. So these AC units are like, I don't know, like 5.5, 6 feet by 6 feet. So they came in big boxes. So this maintenance worker, he actually got into one of those boxes, and he got into one of those empty boxes. So this truck driver, either they're not paying attention or he was in on it. That was really never talked about with me anyways. So the inmate is in the empty box after they set up these AC units on the roofs, and the truck leaves. So the inmate is like listening as best he can because this truck is loud and it's just loud in prison. So he hears that the truck starts and stops, and he's figuring out, okay, now I'm at this point, now I'm at this point. Well, so he gets to our sally port to leave the prison, which a sally port is basically 2 doors. It's an area where one door opens. I guess I should do it like this, you know, like one door opens, you come in, they close this door, and then they open this one to let you out. So that's what a sally port is. So this inmate figures out, okay, I'm in the sally port. So now they open up the gate, and now he leaves our prison. Well, in my complex, there's 5 prisons. So he has left ours, but he actually hasn't left the complex. Well, this truck driver drives for like 5 minutes, and then he stops. Well, this driver had another AC unit to drop off at another prison. So he actually gets inside of another prison, this truck with this inmate in the back. Now, I guess this inmate thought, oh, I'm out. I'm just going home. I'm going to wait till this guy stops and I'm going to jump out. So it's freaking hilarious. So this truck driver pulls into another prison. They let him in. And this inmate's like, boom, pops out like he's free. And there's like 10 other officers because he's just inside of another prison. And he's looking around and they're like, what the, get on the ground, you know? And basically he escaped prison and landed up in another prison. So tried to escape. Ooh. Last question. If I was to escape, how would I do it? That's a good one. That's tricky. I would say if I was to try to escape prison, I don't think I would try, but if I was to try, I would definitely try to just disguise myself as an officer. That's probably what I would do. Unfortunately, we're so short-staffed that we have a lot of officers doing overtime in different prisons. So you're seeing random officers all the time. It's not like you're seeing the same people every single day where you're like, hey, Bill, hey, John. No, you're seeing guys that you've never even seen before. So if I was working the main control, which is like the main hub where everybody leaves and leaves and enters a prison, if I was working in there, I'd be seeing random people all the time that I never knew. Now, you're supposed to check IDs, like put it up to your face and make sure. But even then, some guys are like, hey, what's up? Yeah, just go, just get out of here, go home. So if I was to escape, I'd probably try to snatch an officer, take his clothes, dress up as an officer, go to main control, put up even that guy's ID, and just walk right out the door. I guess that would probably be the fastest way. I would imagine that you would get caught because to pull that off would just be insane. For one, there's a whole bunch of rats in prison, like inmates. Some inmates think that, hey, I might get like 5 years shorter on my sentence if I like catch this other inmate doing something like this and kind of like tell another officer like, hey, just so you know, tomorrow inmate so-and-so, he's planning on escaping. And you know what? I've heard of instances where some inmates have done that and they actually do get perks. Like maybe not time off, but the officers would give them like TVs or something, or maybe some extra food for a while and stuff like that. So to be honest, inmates were inmates' worst enemies. We would get information from everybody. Even the heads would be given information to officers all the time because they get kickbacks and perks. So to get away with stuff in prison, you might get away with little stuff like smoking a joint or like bringing in some drugs and stuff like that. But really big things, you're very unlikely to get away with, mostly because other inmates hear about it and word gets around and they'll just tell on you. Alright guys, so that's gonna do it. Ben especially, thanks dude for all the questions. They were really entertaining. You asked some really good questions, man, and I really appreciate you asking questions. And anybody else out there watching these videos, in the comments below, just ask some questions or hit me up on Instagram at Create the World, which is CRE8 the world, just one long word. On Instagram, you can hit me up on there, ask me some questions. I love answering prison questions. I got plenty of stories, a lot of good information that I can give you guys that are not familiar with what goes on in the prison. Hope you enjoyed. The questions were really entertaining to me. I hope I have enlightened some people and answered some questions that maybe you guys have had. Again, my name is Corey. This channel is about being a corrections officer for 9 years, and now I am doing online reselling like on eBay and locally. If you guys haven't subscribed to the channel already, go ahead and subscribe so you can get notified when my new videos come out. And it's been real fun, guys, and I will talk to you guys later. Have a good day.